Digitalization Era session, which is organized by the Aviala uh, Kintura, Baka Manra, Ahmed Umel, Sahadi, and Arya Rissa, who from the NetMation.Asia. So welcome everyone, and also this session is about the open and democratic internet. And as we may know that internet is the foundation of the basis of our emerging technology, and it is open to all and interoperable and relying on the open protocol. In this workshop, we are going to be focused on preserving and upholding the foundational principles of the internet by maintaining the user-centric perspectives and advocating for the continued developments and enforcements of the open standard. Our goal is to prevent the transformation of the internet into the closed and the proprietary and digital ecosystem. So, in this discussion, we are going to raise through examination of the crucial issue that could impact the open nature of the internet. So, we are going to begin by addressing the challenges posed by the open standard in a rapidly evolving technological landscape. In this session, we are going to have the speaker, Henry Vadier, who is the ambassador for the Digital Affairs, French Ministry of Euros and Foreign Affairs, and Paulo Garves, founding director of the Indonesia Lab, and Amrita Chaudhary, who is the director of the CCAOI, and Edmond Chow, CEO of the Asia organization, and Nur Adlin Hanisa, data privacy specialist, International Islamic University, Malaysia. So, first of all, we would like to welcome to the speaker with the very beginning question with for the opening remark of them. So the first question will be like, how can we foster the deployments of open digital architecture that support the transparency and accountability, while also preventing the erosion of the user privacy, monopolistic control by tech giants, and the fragmentation of the internet into the isolated ecosystem. So I would like to welcome and invite the speaker to respond to this question based on your expertise. So who is maybe Edmond, would like to go first for giving the opening remark in response to that question?
Sorry, is it if you're asking for me, sure. Um, I guess it's me because the audio is coming through a little bit shaky. But I guess hello everyone. This is Edmund. I think first of all I think the topic itself is very timely. In fact, maybe slightly overdue. This is something that is very important in terms of the how we look at democratizing the governance of different platforms and how we utilize the internet in an open and interoperable way. So I was just going to give a little bit of an introduction and then come back to Pio's question about the first, I guess, policy question. First of all, I guess one of the things that I find quite encouraging, especially in the development of the internet uh, governance ecosystem, especially with the protocol side, is the IETF, or the Internet Engineering Task Force. Um, in the last couple of years, I kind of reconnected with the Internet Engineering Task Force, the IETF, But before that, actually, I was participating all the way through about 2014, and human rights considerations, privacy considerations was almost unheard of. And in last year, in 2023, I started re-engaging in the IETF discussion, and to my surprise, and actually pleasantly surprised, when we talk about protocol these days, actually beyond what we call the security considerations or even internationalization considerations, human rights and privacy is now a um, uh, feature prominently in protocol discussions as well. And I think that's a very healthy development. And when we talk about as this the way that this session frames it in terms of a democratic approach, we're really not talking about what somebody, what many people point to democracy is in terms of voting and a bit more antagonistic kind of campaigning and voting. But a democratic approach for the internet governance aspect, in my mind, is much more participatory, and also what we have come to treasure and call a multi-stakeholder model. And when we talk about multi-stakeholder, of course, stakeholders include youth and the technical community, which makes the biggest difference because even in multilateral forums, there would be multi-stakeholder kind of consultation, but a lot of times it's much more focused on civil society and the industry. But when we talk about a multi-stakeholder and democratic model, we're talking about youth and technical community being able to participate in an equal footing, and I think that's the major difference here. Now back to Pio's opening question about the issue of privacy, platforms, and fragmentation of the ecosystems. I think they kind of come hand in hand. A and In essence, an open digital architecture, I think it's uh, not only built on interoperability between systems and between jurisdictions. One of the kind of a high interest topic these days is about digital sovereignty. A lot of times when we talk about digital sovereignty, we talk about or countries or governments like to talk about data localization much more in terms of digital sovereignty, a national digital sovereignty. But I think when we think about digital architecture, and we if we really want to address privacy and we really want to address issues about multinational platforms, we need to deal with digital sovereignty in a personal level, whether we have personal digital sovereignty. And I think for countries, governments who really want to support privacy and support data, quote unquote, localization, you have to take it to another level for personal to be able to have ownership, the ability to move data, and the ability to withdraw consent about their own personal data. And that I think is the key aspect, because privacy by design doesn't mean confidentiality of the data. It means that the platforms do not keep data at all from the start to begin with. And that's what I think personal digital sovereignty is about. I will stop here for pause here because I've taken enough time, but I understand that there are a couple of points, but I want to start with the note that multi-stakeholder model is really comes hand in hand with a number of the issues we have today, and that digital sovereignty, we need to dig down to the level of personal digital sovereignty.
Thank you, Edmond. As you mentioned, the multi-stakeholder model is quite important, even for the open and digital architecture, which can support to the transparencies and accountability. And so I would like to ask to the Mr. Henry from the government perspective, how do you see how to foster the deployments of the open digital architecture that can support the transparencies and accountability?
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for this very important topic. That's the question I feel, so I'm very happy to be there. Maybe I could start with a very funny story that I discovered recently. In 1865, that's a while, the French Emperor Napoleon III discovered this new technology, the telegraph, and they thought, wow, that's a very promising technology. How can we be sure that there will be a resource for peace and prosperity and commerce? Because for them, commerce was a source of peace. And they said we should be sure that we'll find a way to be sure that we can send international telegram. So they did convene an international conference in Paris, 1865, and they did decide to develop together open standards for telegraph. And to enforce this, they did install the first ever international organization, the ITU. At this time, it was the International Telegraph Union. It became the International Telecommunication Union. So that's a long story. And I want to share with us, maybe we know this, but we have to recall it. This story of open standards is the story of internet and everything good that did happen. You could not conceive the internet revolution and now the AI revolution without TCP/IP, the web, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Linux, MySQL, Apache, and whatsoever. So the real story of internet revolution is this one. That's the story of open standards. And the question is not should we protect them or do they matter? The question is why does other actors don't recognize this importance? And why do most of our co-citizens make the confusion between big tech companies and public actors like states and this internet? So that's not just, I totally agree with what Edmond said. The multi-stakeholder governance is of the utmost importance, but that's not enough. For me, the question is a good balance between common and enclosure and how to protect the common and the commons. And for this, I just share with you a few ideas, but the open standards, they are not directly attacked because everyone is using them. So they are not directly attacked. They are just neglected. And they are neglected in a time of intense competition and a kind of movement on re-enclosure, because to find a business model, the most easy is to capture your customers and to constrain them to remain in your small enclosure. So the question is how to do politics without being politicized, because the question is really politic. That's about how do we want to live together, and it's not politicized because it's not a right or left or this party or this party. And that's an important question. Sadly, I don't have the answer, but I just have few ideas. First, because you are the youth of the world, and I'm an old veteran of this. I started my first internet company in 1995. I remember at this time, more people knew how those stuff did work. And now, most of our contemporaries, my daughters, for example, they don't pay attention. They say, I'm in internet when they are in TikTok or Facebook. So first, we have to raise the awareness of our friends and families and to re-explain that there is something named internet, there is something named the web, there is something else that is a company, etc. Probably we can afford to have different policies. I think that most people make the confusion. For example, they told me the GDPR, so the European regulation on privacy, is fragmentizing the internet. I said no, the internet is an infrastructure like roads, and I try to regulate companies like cars. So I can on one hand, protect the open, decentralized, free, distributed, unique internet, and on the other hand, ask for some accountability and responsibility to companies. You have to understand this. We have to say to our friends and colleagues, don't be a passive consumers. Pay attention, be skeptical, try to understand how it works. Um, so I will finish with this because we have 3 minutes. But my point is that this is about politics. We have to raise the level of awareness. We have to explain again and again. And we have to have a clear view that this revolution would not have been possible without an important set of open standards. And that the power of this time did just use it. Maybe they did hack this. They are not the owner of this, and we have the right to reclaim and to protest and to say, no, you are just using our infrastructure, please respect it.
Thank you, Mr. Henry, for the giving the lots of idea that we, as a young person, we have to think about how we should be navigate with the open internet, and also there are the challenges. So, um, I would like to ask to the Paula, how do you see as a young person regarding the accountability and transparency of open architecture? Maybe we can think about from the privacy perspectives, or yeah, the floor is here.
Thanks so much. Uh, um, well, let me first give why I do believe open standards are so key, and this comes from a perspective um, from a lawyer. My background is in law. I'm actually here. I'm happy to hear diverse perspectives, Edmond, Mr. Henry, that are experts on the technical part. But I've been working in technology policy for the past 12 years, um, from the private, the government sector, and now as an independent consultant and with civil society organization. And I've always seen open standards as key and core of interoperable internet. Um, so these two ideas, I really believe that it allows for innovations without exclusivity, ensuring that no one is locked into proprietary systems. And on the other side, I can truly see the power and the potential on transparency. Um, I've worked in public procurement solution in my country and with Colombia, and later I can explain this use case. But I truly believe that using open standards, open source tools, standardized data really help enhance transparency in governments and also reduce barriers for a small business, for instance. But the other part is how it promotes inclusion. My whole career, I've tried to bridge the digital gender gap. Today, during the opening ceremony, we've heard from the different excellencies and authorities how important is this and how this gap is increasing rather than bridging. And I do believe that open standards make it easier to create tools that are accessible to everyone and that can help girls, women get into this digital era, promoting open standards with a gender lens. I can speak more about this later. Now going to your question, Fio, about privacy and how we can foster the development of open digital structures supporting these principles. So this may not come as a surprise, but as a lawyer, I truly believe that we need to approve regulation or regulatory frameworks that can be really implemented. And that means having multi-stakeholder discussions that bring legitimate regulation, because I've seen many cases in Latin America. I am from Peru, and I can tell how sometimes these regulations are approved without the appropriate discussion in Congress, and when it's time to implement, it's very hard. This is one thing. Second, to encourage the adoption of privacy by design principles. So many times I've heard countries that do not have data protection laws, and that's a problem and issue that should be tackled, because data protection regulation is a must to prevent the erosion of users' privacy. But even though when we do not have these, I truly believe that private sector and civil society can work hand in hand so that this principle of privacy by design can be from the very beginning of any development of technology. Ensure that all the components of the digital architecture really embed strong safeguards to protect the user data. I may be running out of time, so I'll, last but not least, just my only point that I would like to add, the importance of fostering international cooperation between developing countries and developed countries. It is really important to collaborate across borders, to harmonize standards, practices, to ensure the global flow of information without compromising local privacy norms, and also to set international standards that can help also because we want our economies to prosper. And this can be an idea to follow, for instance, the Council of Europe AI Convention, which is the first one of its kind, the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. So that's for now. Thank you for the invitation. Sorry for saying this lastly.
Thank you, Paulo, for your intervention. Like you highlight about the importance of the international cooperation. Um, like yesterday there was a session talking about privacy and data related to for using, especially the data coming from the global south, and they talk about how the people from the global south are using the internet, and even the data from the global south are also using for the developing the AI and its related evolution. So that is what we can see, that we also need to foster the international cooperation for making sure that those who are those people around the world need to be respectful on their data and privacy with that way. So I will call to the our last speaker, Amrita. How do you see that the accountability and transparency in your opinion? Yes.
Um, Thank you, and thank you for having me. And let me tell you, I'm not a technologist. I just work on policy, so I will be looking at it from a socio-political lens. If we want to actually foster an open digital architecture system which actually supports transparency and accountability, and I think this is what most governments and even civil society are asking from companies today, I think even the open standards has to kind of I would not say work hard, but at least look at certain aspects. For example, at times the security of the systems is a concern, and that's where many of the monopolistic technologies get an edge, that they have the security standards upgraded, etc. But I agree with most of the panelists, like for example, concepts like human rights by design and privacy by design should be enshrined in any kind of technology which is open standard or even proprietary for it to work, because I think those are fundamental things which any platform of any kind should have it. In terms of erosion of privacy, that's a huge concern globally. We see the number of data breaches, we see the antitrust issues which are coming up daily in different countries. Without consent, children's data, etc. is used. So I think any kind of platform, and obviously we do think that when you have an open architecture where people build upon it, with software, with other technologies, these would be considered. And I think there should be more discussion. It should not be just technical people there. The other relevant stakeholders, I would not say multi-stakeholder, but I would say the actors who are important need to be there, not for tokenism, but actually when things are being built, they can give their perspective. Look, have you considered these issues? That these things are there, that the systems don't have biases. We have been talking about AI. We do talk about data sets of global south going, but there are biases, there are racial biases. Are we kind of taking those into consideration. How transparent and accountable are those systems on how it is being used? So I think those things are important. In terms of when you have issues about, the second aspect which you had is monopolistic control of tech giants, I think we first we have to agree that the systems work. It is easy for everyone to use. They understand the pulse of people. We cannot deny a Google or a Facebook or a Meta giving those services which everyone can use. So if you want to have those kind of services given to people, it has to be easy to use. It has to be in different languages so that different people can use it, not only English. And it has to be very easily usable. For example, if you are in a developing country, it has to be mobile friendly. 90% of the people use it in mobile. But if you're building systems for laptops, it's not going to work. So you have to look at the practicality. And for that, you need funding. And I think if governments or even foundations can put in a lot more money or give them incentives to work, I think certain it can help to support the open data or open systems, people who are building upon it, even technologists who are working on it. And these are my perspectives. They may differ, but I think having regulations to encourage them would help. And if you're talking about fragmentation of the internet into isolated ecosystem, again, all fragmentation is not bad. You may argue that one may argue that even IPv6 has fragmented, but it is also a different technology, right? Because when you want to go to IPv6, you have to change your infrastructure, your equipments, and that's why many even ISPs are not investing in it. And Henry mentioned GDPR is also considered a fragmenter, but was it necessary to protect the data privacy of Europeans? I guess so. So not all fragmentation is bad. And countries and nations would obviously want to protect their interests. We've seen a lot of things, right? We've seen the Snowden revelations. We have seen other things. And there are countries who are snooping on the others too, nation states and bad actors. So one may want to protect their interest, but you have to see the cost at which you are protecting. Is it really going to help you and the others in the long run, or is it going to harm? So I think it's a very thin line. I may be saying a controversial statement, but it needs to be seen what kind of fragmentation are we talking about. So I'll end it at that.
Thank you, Amrita. Mostly, when we are talking about the fragmentation, it might be have various definition of the fragmentation as well, right? So you also highlight about the how it is how we can sees the fragmentation in somewhat way, and how we can make sure the accountability and transparency in, even talking about the assessing the platform like the Google service and the other kind of like that. So I've actually, Amrita is not the last speaker. My apology. We also have a data specialist, new Eileen. So I would like to give floor to her. Stick to the 5 minutes as we are about running out of the time. So Eileen, how do you see about this matter in your perspective? Lynn, the floor is yours. Can you unmute yourself? Technical team, could you please have to unmute to the link? Hello, technical team.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here today among such distinguished experts and visionaries. I am Dr. Nur Adilin Hanisa, and my academic and professional journey has focused on the intricate relationship between law, technology, and innovation. As a legal scholar specializing in data privacy, I have dedicated my career to exploring how we can leverage the transformative power of digital technologies while safeguarding fundamental principles such as privacy, fairness, and inclusivity. In my work, I aim to bridge the gap between technological advancement and regulatory framework, emphasizing fostering trust and accountability in our rapidly evolving digital ecosystem. Today, I am excited to discuss a topic that is central to these efforts, an open and democratic internet in the digitization era, improving digital governance for the internet we want. The digital age presents us with immense opportunity, but also challenges that requires thoughtful and collaborative solutions. By balancing innovation and responsibility, I believe we can build a digital future that is fair, inclusive, and resilient for everyone. We can foster a digital architecture while addressing these pressing challenges using a multifaceted approach and multi-stakeholder collaboration, including governments, the private sector, academia, and civil society. I would like to emphasize more on the significant role of regulation in ensuring accountability, creating uniform standards, curbing monopolies, and having a balanced approach. The EU GDPR is a good example of comprehensive data protection regulation. According to the EU Commission, the GDPR aims to give citizens back control over their data and simplify the regulatory environment for businesses. Moreover, GDPR has established itself as a benchmark for other countries to follow. GDPR enhances transparency, safeguards privacy rights of EU citizens, and align with open standards like ISO 27001 and W3C standards that promotes principles like data portability and interoperability, which help mitigates monopolistic control. This harmonized regulation help reduce the complexity and compliance and prevent fragmentation. Data privacy laws are emerging and being amended as we speak. For example, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Personal Data Protection Law came into force last year and became fully enforceable in September this year. Another example is my country, Malaysia. Just amended its data privacy law this year, introducing updates including mandatory data breach notification and rights to data portability. The UN Trade and Development reported that 137 out of 194 countries have data privacy laws. Regulation need to be flexible and updated to reflect the technological advancement. This adaptability ensures that regulation will not become obsolete in the face of rapid technological change. Robust regulation must be accompanied by effective enforcement to ensure that organizations' compliance. When it comes to the compliance, there is no one size fits all solution for each organization to address its unique circumstances. Even in country without data privacy regulations, since privacy practices almost have similar templates, tech company can voluntarily adopt self-imposed best practices like implementing privacy by design, such as encryption, anonymization, and data minimization to foster trust and innovation. A common misconception that strong regulations stifle innovation. However, research has proven otherwise. An overly rigid or outdated regulation can hinder innovation, particularly for smaller players. The OECD, in its recommendation for agile regulation, governance to harness innovation, has provided guidance to countries on how to adapt regulatory framework and institution to challenges and opportunity of innovation to enable better governance outcome. So the key of this regulation is the balancing between the innovation and regulation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. You mentioned about the great example, and even though the GDPR is, from the global north side, we can. There are also the great example that you mentioned about. This can be the reference, and we can practice, but in the global south as well. Why having like flexible regulation and adopting the policy by referring to that standards. Thank you for mentioning about this, and I did. I have to pass the floor to our online moderator for the next part of our session. Parker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for the passing on. So it's a very good answer we get from the speaker. So we have a connecting, not so connecting, but yes, a connecting questions which can be around to for the session. So, but I would like to request every speaker to stick to 2 minutes because we are lacking from the time. So question is, how can open standards be enhanced to better accommodate the pace of technological change and foster agility and responsiveness in addressing emerging challenges and opportunities? So as Noor was the last one to speak, so I would like to pass the floor to Noor, and if she can just quickly sums it up in 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Barka. Actually, I already mentioned before, in order to ensure the agility of the regulation, they must consider all the factors, and it must be not be rigidly outdated. It must be updated from time to time. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for so quick and small answer. Yeah, you had just completed in like few seconds only. Thank you for that. Then I will request Edmund to like highlight whatever his answer for this question is.
Sure. Thank you. Well, I guess I touched on that a little bit, but I would add that the protocols development or the open standards development, whether it is in IETF or other parts of the internet governance ecosystem, I think itself needs to improve in terms of evolving the governance processes and to more agile ability to address. But I think the one of the things that is really critical in the next few years is how the global multi-stakeholder model works with the local multilateral systems that have legislations and so on. I think I agree with Henry earlier very much that whereas the standards are not under threat right now, it's largely neglected. And that is reflective of some of the local legislations as well, or regional. When we look at GDPR, I don't think on its own, it creates any kind of fragmentation. It's actually a very genuine, in my mind, it's a genuine attempt to bring privacy to the forefront. But what it did unintentionally was that what was legislated for a higher user level for privacy actually had a impact on domain registrations, for example, where the who is information and the registration information is, suddenly disappeared, and that is the kind of threat that fragmentation brings. And that comes back to, I think, one of the key issues is how do how do we work how does the local legislation work to complement the global multi-stakeholder model whereby the technical community and civil society and the academia are all participatory in the agenda setting as well as decision making process, and then inform the local legislation so that the two of them don't step over each other. I think that is what the internet governance ecosystem really need to figure out in the next few years, which addresses the issue of the pace of technical change and the agility in the standards development process.
Okay. Thank you, Edmund. So I would ask the same questions to Amrita, although she already informed that she is not a technical person, but still when we talk about the challenges and opportunities in any emerging technology, we still consider and always consider. So I'd like to answer this.
Thanks, Barka. If saying how an open standard enhance to better regulate the pace, I think more dialogue between the technical communities who are into standard making and also those who are using these standards to build up within the countries. They may not have the same technical expertise. So, having more dialogues on that amongst the different actors or the people who would be impacted. Impact assessment is important, and I'm taking it from what Edmund has cited as an example that many times the unintended impact of a regulation
is not thought of earlier. So better impact assessment would be something. Obviously, when you are using etc. Some things, the scalability of the technologies which are being made is something which needs to be looked at. The security part, many times, you have scaled to something else, but then there may be hidden cost for developers, and I'm talking from those who use these standards later. The compliance and enforcement parts later on, I think those are certain things which come to me at the top of the mind, which needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. So I would like Paula to answer it.
Thank you, Arta. So briefly as well, I think first technology neutral frameworks, and I could cite as an example the Council of Europe
Europe
AI
AI
Convention
Convention
on,
on, well, AI, the rule of law and human rights. Yesterday on the session of Ambassador Bjorn Berg mentioned how difficult it was to find a regulatory framework that is technology neutral, right? That can be future proofing. That's the word he used. And I found that very, very important because how to design these standards that apply to technologies that keep changing. I mean, we've seen AI doing some or performing some actions in 2022, and now, well, I don't know what will happen next year, right?
so
So, like,
flexibility in implementation is a must, in my opinion. Allow for variability in how these standards are applied. But this comes with a dynamic and I would say temporal, if not annual or as much annual feedback loops, right? For instance, for this Council of Europe Convention, for instance, they have created this group that will review the document. I believe that this could be nice solutions. And I cannot avoid mentioning digital literacy because we cannot forget the citizens that are the ones being impacted by these technologies. When I was working in the government of Peru, I created the program called Digital Girls Peru. And once again, I need to repeat on the gender gap. So creating digital literacy programs is a must, and if possible, and that's why I'm mentioning because I know people from governments and private sector are hearing, investing in programs that are targeted to girls and women because we need them to understand how these open standards, how these technologies are working because they are part of these discussions as well. And nowadays, I see this question to improving, enhancing democratic and citizen engagement. Nowadays, and especially in Peru, all the regulation must be under a public participation process. But how can this public participation process be effective if our citizens do not understand what is being regulated, discussed, or even created in the standards, right? So this is a leg, I would say, that is fundamental for the future of internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, for the brief and answering the Preeti's question at the same time. So coming to Henry, as Paula somewhere linked it with the digital world, and I find that Henry's forte is somewhere about digital affairs. So I would like to a bit discussion that how can digital affairs still contribute and still manage the balance between the open standards and making it the private at the same time to better accommodate the technological pace and changes we are facing as by age or by the years we are passing down. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that one conclusion of this exchange is that we have to enforce open standards and digital commons. Developing them and promoting them is not enough. We need to do more. And that's for diplomats, but also for ministry, for civil society, for companies, and for other ministries. For example, and that's very important, we have to use it and to contribute. When I was in charge of the French IT department, I did pass executive order, if I may, to say that public servants have the right and the duty to contribute to open source because they were not sure to have the right. Then we have to pay attention to protect when we regulate or when we legislate. I give the point to Edmond. I know very well the controversy regarding GDPR and the WHOIS. I have also the French seat at the ICANN. Um, I can tell you that we could have find solutions, but a lot of people wanted to sell those data and didn't really look for solutions. The French law, for example, we have the very old GDPR for 40 years, but a lot of very personal data has to be public. If you run for an election, for example, you have to tell it publicly. So we could have decided to say some important data necessary for global security has to be online. It was really possible, but you have to think about this when you prepare the law. Probably we should, in every public policies, impose data portability and interoperability by default. So it will be a great service to open standards. Uh, Probably we have to go further and to finance a bit. And with Jonas here, we try to convince Europe to launch a foundation to finance open standards, digital commons, and public goods. And that's my last point, I think, inspired by the Indian example, that at some point you have to contribute, and that digital public infrastructure and public goods matters. We cannot just wait and see and expect that the market will fix everything. We have to inject some resources in this ecosystem. That's all.
Okay, thank you for the answers. So we will now like to open the floor for the Q&A part. So if anyone have any question, they can raise their hands in the Zoom chat. And for the on-site, you can take care of. You can tell if there are any questions, we can take up them. Otherwise, I will like to tell the Zoom people if they can ask their question and unmute by the technical team there.
I noticed there's a comment on the Zoom chat. Maybe you can read through it.
Okay, in that case, so there's a question from Aviral Kenturia. So it's an open question for all the speakers, whoever wants to answer it. The question states that what actionable steps can different stakeholder groups implement right away to support an open, fair, and accessible digital ecosystem? I would appreciate if each of the speaker could address this from the perspective of their respective stakeholder group, and you can answer. Like he is asking the same question to every speaker, and he would like that each of the speaker get the chance to speak on this particular question. So let's start with Edmund.
Sure.
After 5 minutes,
Happy to do.
sorry. Can you hear me? We only left for 5 minutes, so let's stick to 1 minute to each speaker.
Yeah,
Sorry about
let's stick to 1 minute.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I mean, I think in response to the question from the technical community, I actually agree very much with what Henry mentioned earlier. Nowadays, users don't know enough of the underlying technology, like even the domain name system or how email works or how HTTP works. People need to be a little bit more aware in order to address issues like barriers of entry that is created by walled gardens, what we call privately owned public spaces like Facebook. How do we, deal with that to redefine some of the how things are implemented in a more open manner to address the interoperability of the digital ecosystem. So I think from the technical community's perspective, I think a lot of the platforms in the drive to quote unquote make things easier for newcomers are actually, kind of trapping us into walled gardens where barriers of entries are struck up, and that needs to be reversed. And people needs to actually, I believe, in the future where people's digital literacy actually is increased and is able to operate the internet in the way that we want more.
Fio, if any of the on-site speaker would like to answer it, like we have lack of time and we want to cover it.
Do you hear me? And that's my conclusion. I see another question. No, I don't see the question anymore. But the question was about how to implement human rights, etc., within protocols. I just want to say that you won't find a technical answer to a political problem. So we need also to do politics. We need to stand for human rights, free speech, etc., everywhere, and not expect, because this would be the techno solutionist mistake.
Anyone else? Later, or
Okay, okay, from my perspective, thank you for the question, Aviral. I really love this question because it really need a collective efforts to make it worse. For the perspective of government, they need to implement and enforce inclusive policies and laws, and for the private sector, they need to adopt some best practices for uh, privacy by design, even though it depends on their uniqueness of their circumstances. It is more into art, not based on the science. So it depends on their own creativity. For the civil society, they need to advocate their users' rights, raise awareness to inclusion, and collaborate with policymakers to shape the equitable governance. And for the academia, they need to research ethical frameworks and offering accessible digital literacy program to empower marginalized communities. I think together we can build a digital future and internet that we want. Thank you.
last part? Yeah. Do you have a last word? Very short.
Okay, then I will request Averell to take a Zoom group photo, and from there, you can help us.
Thank you, everyone. We would like to have a group photo, so please stay pin our moderator and speaker and also organizer. Thank you.